Ready to build your first deck but don't know where to start? Let's fix that. Hey everyone, this is Kel'varon, and today we're going to be going over some deck building mechanics and basically ways that you can go about building a deck where it seems to actually do what you want it to do, and it's not just kind of a mishmash of cards that you think will work but don't actually seem to go together. So, the first thing we want to do is we want to figure out either what sort of the win condition or sort of the end game picture looks like. We want to start with the end in mind, because at the end, Wonders is a game about being the one in control of the most stones. So you want to either have 3 stones and control realm 1, control 4 stones, or have some sort of alternate win condition where maybe you don't need to have 3 or 4 stones because you've got your opponent locked out of 3 or 4 different realms, and if you do that, there's only 3 or 4 stones that you even need to be considering. That's kind of the basic gist of what I would be looking at. So in this particular scenario, why don't we work on building a single orbital deck? So we're only going to be looking at one particular orbital, and for this one, I'm going to go with a 1250 DBS score is our target, just because I know there's a tournament coming up, and maybe this will help somebody make a deck for that if they are planning on attending. And if not, again, this is just kind of some good basic information to have on hand in case you're trying to build a deck and you don't know where to start. Which orbital do we want to grab? Trying to think about which orbital has probably the best identity, and not just identity, but capabilities of being able to prevent each of the other orbitals from doing its thing. If I were to do just sort of my gut instinct, I would say it's probably going to be between Boundless and Patria. Why don't we make it a Patria deck? Because that's got a lot of powerful cards. It's got a lot of effective cards. It's got some good synergies. So the first thing I'm going to do actually is I'm going to type in the word attuned. Because one of the things in this game that you want to be able to do is have some good action economy. And the way that you build good action economy is you have cards that can effectively do multiple things without you having to spend multiple actions. So one reason why Moonfire Crystal Mouse is a good card is because you're able to get 2 draws off of it, and then potentially more. When you compare that versus drawing a single card, 2 cards is obviously better than 1. There is the issue of the fact that you have to spend an action in order to play the mouse in the first place, but there's ways to cheat out the mouse. Like, let's say you're running a Reanimator deck, well, then you could be running something that brings it back out of the abyss. There's many different ways you could do that. And if you do that using a different card's effect, you use the action to play that card, you get the mouse for free, and then you get the 2 draws on top of that. So now you're ahead. Things like that. That's one of the things we want to be taking a look at here when we're building our deck. I know that Patria has some decent cards that have tap abilities. I'm already looking at Master Farad as an option. He's a primary, so let's go ahead and add 2 copies of him. We also, because we have a limit of 1250, we could actually go with some pretty high cost DBS scores. So we're going to add 2 copies of Tony. Tony's a good card to have in the deck. We were just talking about tap abilities. So if we manage to get Razia out before we get out Master Farad, we have 2 cards that have attuned, and then we also have the one that will untap the one that's tap. That makes things a lot nicer. Lynx is a pretty low cost and low power card. I'm a little up in the air about Lynx, also up in the air about Steed. I don't remember exactly how many high cost Patrian cards there are just for Patria. I think the next thing we'll actually maybe take a look at tap to see if there's some other things that we can throw in there that'll fit that identity. Because we've already got 2 cards here that can untap, and we have 1 card that can tap. But if we have other cards that we can deal with at tap and untap, that'll help us. So here you can see on round end, if you took the last turn, or if you took the last turn of the round, you may untap target land or wonder. So that's another way to build some additional value out of your action economy. So maybe we want to throw him in. We'll just do that as kind of a placeholder. I'm trying to think what would be some good. Right now, how are we doing on classes? We've got Patrians, Cat Beastmaster, Tigrean, Explorer, Tigrean, Hero Mage, and Sloth Beast. Beast, Beastmaster, Tigrean. Maybe. Well, let's keep working on the tap mechanic and see if we can find anything else. I have a feeling I'm going to want some elves in this deck, maybe some monkeys. We're definitely going to throw Seer's Gaze in because of the increased DBS score. And actually, let's do a third one as well. That'll give us some deep draw mechanics. So already I'm thinking of some other things that we can probably throw in the deck. We'll add 2 Caliph, because we'll get the untap a land or an item in addition to a harvest. So that's another way to get us some additional action economy out of this. And for now, I think that'll do it for taps. So what was the other thing we were going to do? Oh, because of Seer's Gaze, we want to look at some lands, just to see what we have for land options. Again, high DBS. I'm going Ethereal Growth. I'm also going Cedar Shade because Cedar Shade's a good one to have. It does a good job of preventing your opponents from doing some things that they would like to do that you may not want them to do. Now, looking at the rest of our options, we can either go deep into tokens, we can go into low cost, or we can go into just buff. But these lands in particular, if you can kind of notice, they're all pretty low DBS scores. And because of that, I mean, not necessarily because of that, but one thing we can be doing is looking for higher DBS options that would also fit, that might get us some additional value. So this one, it's kind of like an Indra Citadel, but it's got a condition on it. You have to play a third land in order to untap it. So it's not as good as Indra's, but if you get 2 of these out, it is as good as Indra's, and then you don't have to be dealing with, which realm it's located in and that kind of stuff, or kingdom. So in that regard, I would say this is actually worth running. I'm going to put 2 in, and then I'm going to put 2 of these in, I think. Actually, I'll put 3 of these, I think. 1, 2, 3. Now, this is maybe a little bit high in terms of how many total lands you might want to be running in a mono-colored deck. But at the end of the day, I don't see it as being that big of an issue. And we can always cut lands if we're finding we want to put other cards in the deck. There is a reason for running a fair number of lands, and actually it ties in with this Seer's Gaze. So that was part of, I think, why I ended up doing what I did. We might even throw another land in there. So now we've got 9. Actually, we could throw some more lands in here too. Now the question is Emerald Clearing or Quiet Creek. I think let's do 2 copies of Emerald Clearing. We're actually halfway, well, not quite halfway to our goal. So we got 24 cards. So we're about halfway in both regards. We're about halfway in terms of total number of cards, and we're about halfway in terms of the DBS score. Means we're going to be kind of getting to the point where it's going to make sense to start looking for our win condition. We've got Razia here. He's great as a possible win condition. And then our 4 cards currently that, well, actually, Caliph can't untap Wonders, but we do have Master Farad for that. We have Bombi. Bombi can untap Wonders. May as well add that to the deck. It's also going to have synergy with another card we're going to have in our deck. Let's go ahead and add Eye of Patria for the lands. Let's go ahead and add John Breakbang. Give us some synergy with our, is it Ren Arbor? Our Ren Arbor. There's another card that I want to add in to kind of help get to John Breakbang a little bit faster too. We don't have enough elves for me to say we should run King Aldern Leaf Song. And Rage of the Ancients too. We just don't have enough single class synergy going on in our deck currently for me to think that we should be running this. So I'm going to leave it out for the moment. We're going to add Roranoko. Because we're running a lot of lands, I'm going to add Great Veridon. And you'll see these guys are actually pretty low DBS, but they have really good effects. I'm also going to add Plant Terror, and I think that might be it actually for legendaries. So actually, we'll throw Verdantia in as well. So we've got a lot of decent legendary wonders that we've thrown in the deck. I think a lot of them are just on play or on arrival. That's a whenever. It's on arrival. So that one was on play. This is on play. And then this is just whenever. Not a lot of tap synergy, so maybe we'll end up taking Ayugas out. It's a possibility. But that's one of the things with decks is that either you can go really deep on a certain idea or you can pivot when you start to realize that maybe your initial vision isn't going as intended, which that seems to be the case at this point. So I'm going to now that we've done a few things, I'm actually going to type in symbiosis, because symbiosis is going to be helpful when it comes to playing against other orbitals, because it allows us to get effects that we otherwise wouldn't have access to. So I'm actually going to add 3 Rootling Terrors, because we can have up to 3 in the deck, and I'll add 3 Tearing Fayas. We can have up to 3. So you can see just those 6 cards have given us a pretty substantial boost in our DBS score. And then I'm going to quick go to preview, see how many cards we've got in the deck. Won't have to count them this time. 37. So we've got room for 13 more cards. So with 13 more cards, I'm going to take a quick look and see what items and spells we have access to, because we are kind of missing a lot of those. We've got 3 Seer's Gaze, but that's not going to necessarily be everything that we could utilize. This is actually a pretty good item. I've come to grow in my appreciation for it because of the fact that it prevents your opponent from being able to target or control. I guess tap, control, or put counters on. So they can't put -1 counters on stuff. They can't put null counters on stuff. They can't tap it. They can't take control of it. We don't have a lot, again, that really cares that much about being tapped. Razia cares about being tapped. It's interesting that there's this much tap and untap support in this orbital when it really seems like about the only real good target for that would be Razia. Let's take a look at some of these other cards that we have access to. Petrine Home Cooked Meal, that's another class 1. Glowcap Fungus, that's a pretty low DBS. Target Wonder gets +5 this round. Tap enemy in this realm. Blossom's Bite, maybe? +3 once per round. You may untap. If I was able to guarantee that I could get to that Razia, which the Seer's Gaze might be able to do on a pretty consistent basis, but I don't think it'll be able to do it enough to warrant running that many things that untap wonders. 2 power elemental token. We don't have that many items either. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to run Azure Vault when we don't have a lot of items. We've got these. Maybe throw 1 in. I think maybe throw in a couple of Path of Lights. So now we're at 40, or we should be at 40. And we've got right around another 118 DBS to deal with. Let's go back to Wonders. See what Wonders we're missing. Alright, so there's Briarmaw. Briarmaw would be a pretty decent option. They get tapped, they get sacrificed. Oh, here's what we're going to add. 1, 2, 3. That'll let us seek 5 a land. That's got some synergy with John Breakbang, so we can get our lands out and get the free actions off of them, and then also we'll be able to uncover John Breakbang. When he gets brought out, all of our legendaries will get an additional 4 power. That'll give us some options, because then Bombi, Eye of Petraea, Razia, and if we seek lands, that'll also make the Great Veridon a lot better, because then each realm that controls a land, we can use his effect. I think Counselor is worth putting in. When you play a land, you can tap target item or wonder. I'll throw in a couple Chieftain Clees, and I think we'll actually have enough DBS left over. Ooh, do we want Fungalith Colossus, or do we want... I suppose we actually haven't... Oh, that was one thing I guess I forgot about, is tap and untap. Jarambe is the real one that is kind of a big on the tap synergy. Question is, do we want to run Jarambe? Because that would also synergize with our legendary. And we've got a lot of attuned. All of the attuned here. Not you, but these 5 would get us free actions. Tony gets us lands. Commanding Croak gets us lands. And we could use that sword to get out Jarambe. Or not get out Jarambe, but use it with Jarambe to get some craziness going. Okay. Here's one that I was thinking I wanted to put in the deck, but based on our current situation, it's actually a little bit too expensive because we can't even fit one in, and we still need to get another 9 cards in our deck. Oh, we're actually right there. So we have exactly the right number of cards. We've got 11 lands, 4 items, 5 spells, 30 wonders. Now the question is, are these the 30 wonders we want to run, right? Right now, I'm thinking Ayugas needs to come out, because really the only target we currently have is Razia. I'm not thinking I want to redo the deck enough to add a Jarambe and all of that, because I do really like a lot of the other parts that I have working in this deck currently. So I'm thinking the Ayugas comes out, and that gives us 71 points to play with. I do like the idea of the current balance between wonders, lands, spells, and items, so I'm not going to monkey with that a whole lot. But we've got 3 wonders we can put in. We could either put in 1 copy of Red Stealing Hunter, or we could put in maybe 2 copies of either Pachanko or Fungolith Colossus. We'll add the Sage. We don't have a lot of token or counter stuff, rather. So Golad the Sage isn't going to make a whole lot of sense. Well, I guess we do with some of the Symbiosis. They put counters. Those are, some are on ours and some are on others. And I don't know if we would want to double the number of negative counters we put on our own stuff. So that's not going to do a whole lot of good necessarily. Another thing we can do if we end up being in a crunch for DBS, we can always throw some Igling Roch in there. Or Galen Mosspaw, another legendary. Enemy lands can't be harvested. And that actually kind of goes and fits with our strategy with Path of Light. Didn't realize I only put 2 copies of that in. Thought I had put 3 in, but that's fine. Yeah, let's add Galen. Yeah, unless we put like Igling Roch in, I don't think we're going to get a chance to add our Red Stealing Hunter. Now the question is, do we want Pachanko or do we want the Fungolith Colossus? Because right now I think those are kind of the ones that I'm the most interested in. We don't have a lot of item nullification. We also don't have, yeah, this would tap, or this would nullify tap effects. I'm going to look for items. Wonders that do stuff with items. So Carry Honest Moth would be our option if we wanted to do that. Items are nulled. Because this one taps items or wonders, which that's flexible. Destroy target item with cost 3 or less. I like the power of this one. I like the fact that this one has flying. So if we needed to move it to a realm where some item is being ridiculous and not letting us do something we want, it would help us a little bit more. Problem is, well, okay, this is where using some of these other tools really helps when it comes to deck building. So we've got the preview. We're still missing 2 wonders. Look at our cost curve. We've got a lot of 2, 3, and 4 costs and not a lot of 5, 6, 7, 10. We've got 1 here, 4 here, 2, and 1. So these are all of our legendaries. I think this might be, is that John Breakbang maybe? The 5? He's a 4. This is a 3? That's a 4. That's why we've got a lot of 4s. A lot of our legendary wonders are falling in 4. I have Patrai as a 3. Bombi's, I think, a 2. So Veridan's probably the 7. Plantair's a 7. Verdantia's probably the 10. No, the 10? The 10, okay. And the 6s are the ones, 6s and 5s are the ones I don't know. What's Razia? Razia 6? Razia 6. The ones are with the Razia. Oh, I suppose the Tearing Fires. So Razia, and then we've got 3 Tearing Fires. That's interesting, because they're all 6s. Or those ones are 6s. Razia is a 9. Razia is a 9 power. We can put a -1 counter on Razia, 2 +1 counters on the Tearing Fires, and then they would all have the tap ability. Wouldn't want to try to copy Verdantia's ability because we get Verdantia out. Well, actually, yeah, we get Verdantia out. It's going to be towards the end of the game whenever you harvest. Yeah, we can keep Verdantia in because there's a chance that we'll be harvesting our lands late, especially if we're going to be trying to get value off of the Seer's Gaze. The one thing we do have to watch out for, though, is to make sure that we don't draw too many cards off of our Seer's Gaze, because then we're going to have to discard a lot of them, and that can end up being counterproductive. That's still okay. So I think I have maybe a better idea of what we might want in the deck. We might want something more in the sort of 5 or 6 cost range, or something a bit higher. So that puts me, I'm leaning a little bit towards more getting 1 or 2 of those Fungolith Colossus out, or a Garruk Supreme would be another option. So that just nails down an entire realm. The reason that I would prefer the Fungolith Colossus to a Garruk Supreme has to do with the effect. So there's a couple of good effects with Fungolith. So we can put 4 -1 counters on target wonder, so that can kill just about anything that's probably a 3-cost or below. And then on battle, banish target card in the abyss to gain 4 energy. So if we're in a crunch, we can use some of those extra actions that we built up with some of these attuned and tap or untap abilities to get extra value out of our lands. Use Chieftain Klee to get some of the on-harvest stuff again. And then we can use Fungolith Colossus in order to get some energy, so we can use those actions to get out some of our higher cost wonders instead of having them clogging up our hand. I'll add 2 of them in. I'm going to go back through and take a look at the deck again, just to make sure that I'm happy with how everything looks. All right, so for legendaries, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 legendaries. So that would actually be a fairly decent number of power that we could get off of a Break Bang. On average, you're likely to see 2 to 3 if we're going to be running 9. So one of them will actually be John, because we're going to be using a lot of those Seek effects between Veridon and Commanding Croak. And actually, if we manage to Commanding Croak and then we use, let's say, Rootling Tear, drop Commanding Croak by 1, copy that ability, then we can make sure that we get the better part of our lands out of our deck. And we can also make sure that we're loading up all of the different realms, so that when we do play the Great Veridon, the fact that 3 out of every 5 cards is going to be a wonder, and we seek 1 to get a Patrian Wonder. Well, if we've basically eliminated all of the lands out of the deck, then we're really just looking at the Seer's Gaze, Path of Light, Whisper Leaf Cloak, and Azure Vault as things that would be in the way, right? And actually, I am going to make one more change, because I feel like we have the means to do it. And I think it would actually do us some good making this adjustment. So, like I said, Azure Vault, it's a high DBS card, but it's really only protecting these 3 cards. And we have Eye of Patria will protect our lands, so we don't need to worry about the lands. So Azure Vault is kind of really only there for the items. So if we take Azure Vault out, then I think we can throw the Red Stooling Hunter into the deck. Now that we've freed up about 78 DBS, throw one of those in. And we can always use a Rootling Tear, throw 1 -1 counter on it, copy the Red Stooling Hunter. Or, since we've got it in there, we could use the Plant Tear, have the Plant Tear copy the Great Veridon and the John Breakbang, or copy the John Breakbang and Red Stooling Hunter. We could use it to copy Warren Oko, and then instead of just 3 lands with growth counters, we could have 6 lands with growth counters. There's a lot of options in this deck now. So I'm in a point where I would say that this is actually a pretty solid deck. I like the theme. We've got some protection here. Not a lot of protection, but it's I would say enough that we wouldn't necessarily have to worry about what our opponents are doing. Use the Seer's Gaze, the Commanding Croak, and some of the attuned stuff to get out a bunch of lands early. And then we are left with our late game options, stuff with Symbiosis, Warren Oko, John Breakbang, and the Great Veridin, to really nail down our control over the board. And then we could always Path of Light at the end of the game after we've tapped all of our lands because we know that we have it. The one thing we have to watch out for with Path of Light is that it nullifies this. So we wouldn't want to use Path of Light unless they have a ton of actions that they would have at their disposal if we're in, say, round 7 and they've already used up one or two of the ones that they get at the start of the round. Because all of the other orbitals have ridiculous stuff that would allow you to, do the stuff that we're trying to protect them from by having this piece of equipment in the deck in the first place. That's really about the only thing that we have to kind of watch out on our side when it comes to misplaying, because I could see that being a situation where, let's say, we do this, we play Path of Light, we nullify our Whisperleaf Cloak, and then our opponent has a Wind Reaver and they decide they want to steal our stuff. That's not going to be helpful. So hopefully if they do that, they won't have enough actions at that point to get enough stones to take over. So, but I think this is a good place to be in. And hopefully some of the commentary that I had gave you some ideas about things to be looking out for when it comes to finding cards that synergize, finding different things that'll work together, things that won't necessarily work together. There's plenty of different ways that I could have taken this deck. I could have taken it so that it was more of a tap-focused deck, something that's going to be running Jarambe as kind of the main target, but then also having Razia and the Symbiosis crew, so that between those two cards, maybe we found a third card that has some sort of tap-free or tap action, and then between those three, having all these Symbiosis cards that could target it and say, hey, I want to do that effect again. And then having things like Bombi and Master Farid in order to untap them. It's always an option. But this is what we came up with. Hopefully you found it helpful in the way that I went through everything. If there's anything that you guys would want me to discuss or to bring up in a future episode, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. This has been Kel'varon, and until next time, I'll see you at the table.